it's time to do the thing everybody wants to do when it comes to playing the Pokemon trading card game, and that is build your very own deck. Hey everybody, Nick from 9Card TCG, and today, well, you know how to play, you know what cards are really popular, but how do we put it all together in a deck? That's what we're going to cover today. We're going to go over some general rule of thumb when it comes to building a deck, and you're going to see, you know, a lot of decks follow a very similar overall structure in terms of the number of Pokemon, trainers, and energies that they use. The combination of those might be different across decks, but there's some fairly fundamental rules that we're going to employ when using them. Also, if you haven't already, please leave the video a like, a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. All that kind of stuff tells YouTube that this is a good video and other people should watch it. A friend of mine on Discord, Blackwinds, had given me a code card for the Single Strike Urshifu VMAX League Battle Deck. So if you leave a comment on this video, you're going to be entered into a giveaways where you can win that code card so you can start using it on the PTCGO app when we draw the giveaway, which will be in 1 week from the video's release. So if you're watching this video a week from when it came out, make sure you leave a comment so you can be entered to win. Now, with all that out of the way, let's hop over to PTCGO so we can talk about something that we have to address before we decide what cards we're going to use, and that is formats. What are Pokemon formats? The easy answer is it tells you what sets of cards you're allowed to use for a particular tournament or for play. The most commonly played, I shouldn't say this, I don't know statistically which is the most commonly played. However, I do know that the most common tournament style, like if you want to go and play in events, whether it's at your local game store or you want to play in actual like real big tournaments, the most commonly played format for official events is Standard. And Standard, you are allowed very specific sets. At the time of this recording, you are allowed to play anything from Sword and Shield, which came out in February 2020, all the way to the most recent set of Fusion Strike, and soon we're going to get Brilliant Stars at the end of February 2022, so there's quite a few number of sets that you're allowed to use in Standard. If you're a returning player and you say, well, I have a bunch of cards that I don't necessarily want to reinvest into new cards, maybe I just get a couple of things I need, Expanded might be a good place to start because you already have cards. Expanded is a wider card pool, but you usually don't get to play Expanded for official events. So I personally don't play Expanded. I only play Standard since I am a competitive player. Legacy and Unlimited are even less common in terms of actual like official events, though people really do like retro formats. If you have cards from 1999 or 2000, Unlimited, could be an option for you. Cards from Legacy and Expanded do get reprinted later in the sets. For example, Ultra Ball was a card that was legal in Standard. We had a format rotation, and I'll talk about what that means in a second. And now it's coming back. It's been reprinted. So just because you have older cards doesn't necessarily mean that they are completely worthless and useless and that you should just throw them all out. You can either play older formats like Expanded, Legacy, whatever, or sometimes cards do get reprinted. What is a format rotation? Every year, cards from certain sets are removed from the available pool that you can use, whether it's in Standard or Expanded, so that we can make room for new sets. The point of this is kind of to get you to play with the newer cards. Honestly, if it helps make Pokemon a lot of money because it kind of forces you to buy the newest sets if you want to keep playing official tournaments. But it also does help new players because now there's a much smaller card pool, and still, the card pool is still huge. It's not like there's 20 cards for you to choose from. There's still hundreds of cards that you can use in the deck. Usually, smaller card pools mean fewer things for you to buy. It's easier to locate the products because they're more readily available, being in stores. And there's, like I said, fewer things that you have to learn because the card pool is a little bit smaller. Again, it's still very, very wide, but it's not as big as Expanded. Format rotations usually happen right after the World Championship, so sometime in like late August, September, we will have a format rotation, and then like April, May, in that range, we'll usually know what sets are going to be rotated and when the rotation will happen. So it's not a surprise, and we do know when it's going to happen, or at least we get information before it does, so you don't have to worry too much. So let's go ahead and build a deck. Like I said, I only play standard, and I don't know what's really good in expanded, and I don't know what cards are super useful in expanded, so I can't make an expanded deck, so we are going to go with standard. Now when we get here, we are literally starting from scratch. So the first thing that you need to do is decide what deck you want to play. What Pokemon do you really like? Is there a particular archetype or like a typing you really like? I personally am a huge fan of fighting types, so I always look to play a fighting deck when I can. So there are a few different routes we can go for how to build a deck or what deck we should play. If you want to be super competitive and you want to just go all in on the competitive scene, then you just look up what deck is best at the moment and you build that deck, and there you go. If you want to play something that fits you personally a little bit better, then you have to start looking for what Pokemon are available in that maybe type, or if that Pokemon you really want is even in standard at the moment. So if we're in the app, we can do this really easily because I can search by the type. So I can search for standard Pokemon, and I can look at fighting types, and I can look at Pokemon V. Generally, most decks are going to be using Pokemon V, VMAX, and V-Stars with some single price Pokemon as support. So we can look to see what Pokemon V that are fighting types are available, and I can show not owned, so we can get an even bigger idea. If you like the Colossal deck, well then Colossal is for you. If you like Phalanx or Galarian Surfetch, I actually just made a video about this recently. Galarian Surfetch, really fun deck to play. I personally love Graplock. It's just not a very good card. Lucario is it's going to be useful in about 2 months. Right now, it's not particularly great. My personal favorite deck at the moment happens to be this Single Strike Urshifu deck. So I'm going to get an Urshifu deck off the ground. That's what I'm going to build. So generally, you're going to be having about you're going to have your main attacker. So in this case, it's going to be Single Strike Urshifu V. That's my main attacker. We're also going to have a secondary attacker, and in this case, Single Strike Urshifu pairs really well with Umbreon. So I'm going to have Umbreon as my secondary attacker. Why is Umbreon a really good secondary attacker? Well, Urshifu is weak to Psychic, and Umbreon being a dark type, a lot of Psychic types are weak to dark. So if I'm playing a Psychic type deck, I have now the option of using Umbreon instead of Urshifu. If I'm playing a deck that is weak to fighting, like Jolteon for example, then Urshifu becomes a great option. There's actually quite a few fighting weak Pokemon that will be around for the next format. So Umbreon is good against Mew because Mew is weak to dark. Urshifu is good against Arceus, Jolteon, and Gengar because they are all weak to fighting. There's going to be quite a number of decks that this will be able to handle. So now I have my V and my VMAX of my primary and secondary attackers, and not every Pokemon V is going to have a VMAX. Sometimes like something like Suicune V. Suicune V is just that, that's your primary attacker. So now I need my support Pokemon. If you're playing certain decks, maybe like a Jolteon or a Rapid Strike Urshifu, Inteleon with the Shady Dealings, that'll be your single prize core. However, Single Strike has a very specific Pokemon that we're going to use, and that is Houndoom. So I want to have as many Houndooms as I can, and because I have a bunch of Houndooms, I need Houndours as well. So you can see we're already at the 18 Pokemon mark. Remember, 15 to 20 is about what most decks want. And we talked about Crobat being a very important card for a lot of decks, so we're going to throw in 2 copies of Crobat to make sure that if we prize one, or that if one gets, we have to use another one, there we go, now we have 2 Crobats. The rest of the deck is going to be energies and trainers, and I'm going to fill up my energies first so that I know how many spots for trainers I need. Capture Energy is an extremely useful special energy, And it lets you, when you attach it from your hand to one of your Pokemon, search your deck for a basic Pokemon and put it onto the bench. This is going to let me find my Urshifu or my Umbreons, maybe more Houndours. It's going to let me find them quicker so that I can get them into play and start using them as fast as possible. Single Strike also has a very specific energy that we want to use called Single Strike Energy. And this energy, you can only attach it to cards that have this Single Strike logo. But when you do, it provides either a dark or a fighting type energy, your choice, and your attacks do 20 more damage. So Single Strike is all about putting out a ton of damage and trying to take some really big knockouts. So now that I have 28 cards in my deck, well, we know we have 60 cards that we need, so I need 32 trainers in order to finish out this deck. We'll start with supporters, and these are all the supporters that I have. Boss's Orders is a big one. You're going to see a lot of the cards we talked about in the last video are going to make their appearance here. We're just going to throw in about 9 supporters. Most decks run between 9 and 12 supporters. So Marnie is a really big one. And the ratios of Marnie, Professor's Research, and Boss's Orders that we have, they are pretty common throughout different decks. So there is our 10 supporters. Like I said, between 9 and 12, I like to run about 10. Now it's time to go over to our items. What items can we get for this deck? Well, you could go Great Ball, and you could go Level Ball. I personally am going to go Quick Ball. We'll get some Quick Balls in there, 4, because we want to maximize the chances that we're going to be able to get our basic Pokemon. And I also really like Battle VIP Pass. It's a high risk, high reward card that you can only use if it's the first turn that you're going. However, if you do have it in your hand during your first turn, you can search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon and put them into your hand, which is, you put it directly onto your bench. So really good card if you can get it that first turn. We're also going to throw in an air balloon to help us move around some Pokemon. I'll actually put in 2. And what other items do we want? We looked at Crushing Hammers the other day. I generally don't run Crushing Hammers in this deck because we have a very specific gameplay loop that we are trying to achieve. One of those loops is as we use our Pokemon, they get knocked out and we lose our energies. So these energies go into the discard pile, and we only have a few energies. We only have 8. So if we get these Single Strike energies into the discard pile, we need a way to get them back into the deck so we can continue to attack. And we have an item called Urn of Vitality that lets us do exactly that. We get to take 2 Single Strike energies from our discard and shuffle them back into our deck so that now we can continue to attack and keep playing. So that's an extremely important card for Single Strike decks. What other tools can we use? We could go with an Escape Rope. Escape Rope isn't bad, but we're going to get some Evolution Incense because we desperately want to be able to find our Houndooms and our Umbreon or Urshifu VMAX if we need them. So we're already at 28 trainers and we have 32. A good idea is to try to have some stadium. I personally am a big advocate for having stadiums in your deck. Why? Well, because there are going to be times where your opponent has a stadium that's either really important for their gameplay or prevents you from doing yours. And you need to have a stadium so that you can get rid of theirs so that either they can't be helped or it doesn't hurt you. And a really good example of this is Path to the Peak. Path to the Peak is a really annoying stadium for a lot of decks. And if you have a deck that relies on abilities using your Pokemon V, well, Path to the Peak can really stop that deck from functioning. So for example, I have only 2 Pokemon that have abilities that are Vs anyway, Crobat and Umbreon VMAX, but I want to use their abilities when I need them. And so having a stadium so that I can counter Path to the Peak is really helpful. So I'm going to throw in a couple of copies of Tower of Darkness. That is the Single Strike stadium that you really want to use. Other good stadiums include things like I just saw it. Training Court is a really good and common stadium for decks that don't have a very specific stadium that they might want to use. And if you don't have abilities, then Path to the Peak is a great option. Something like Ice Rider, Calyrax, their deck doesn't really use any abilities, so you just throw Path to the Peak in there to kind of stop other decks from doing their thing. And there we go. Now we have one extra card. We can throw in an extra energy, we can get an extra Pokemon, we can get an extra trainer, we can kind of do whatever we want. I have the stuff that I really want. My extra card is going to be a switch. I like to have some mobility. We have our 2 air balloons, but I also really want to have one switch just in case my air balloons are accounted for. Maybe they're one's prized, they're in the discard pile, they're already attached, and I need to move a Pokemon. I have a switch out that I can use. And then there you go. That's the entire deck. I'm going to say it's that simple, but if you don't know what cards to use, then it can get kind of complicated. But look how many cards in this deck we talked about in the last video. Crobat V is there. You can replace these with Great Ball, and that would be there. We talked about Evolution, Incense, Quick Ball, and Switch. We talked about Boss's Orders, Marnie, and Professor's Research, and Air Balloon, and Capture Energy. How many? I mean, so many of these cards are things we talked about as really popular staple cards. And I'm not kidding. Almost every deck is going to use many of these cards. I mean, not every deck is going to use all of them, but a lot of them use most of them. So knowing 4 Quick Balls is really just the way to go. 1 switch, 2 switch, 1 air balloon, 2 air balloons, really, really common. 2 boss or 3 Boss's Orders, really common. 3, 4 Marnies, 4 Professor's Research, all very, very common in terms of quantities. Some decks will have 4 Capture Energies, some might not have any. Kind of depends on what the primary attacker needs. If you have a deck that relies on specifically water energies, then you probably don't need the Capture Energies or the Single Strike Energies. You're going to have a bunch of water energies instead. So that's how we built a Single Strike deck, and I got to do it using the typings and the Pokemon that I prefer. I love the Pokemon Urshifu, and I'm a big fighting type fan because, well, I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu and I've been training martial arts for 9 years. Fighting types just fit me, and I feel happiest when I'm using them. So let's look at one more deck. We'll look at a really common core, and that is using the Inteleon line. So we're going to go ahead and create a new deck, and it's going to be a standard deck again. Now we're going to have to choose a new primary attacker. Well, I'm going to stick with the fighting type theme, and we'll filter for Pokemon V, and we're going to get Urshifu. But this time we're not going to do the Single Strike version, we're going to do the Rapid Strike version. You generally want multiple copies of your primary attacker, which in this case is going to be Single Strike Urshifu, V, and V Max. Why do we go 4 Vs and 3 V Maxes? Well, we get the 4 Vs because we want to maximize our chances of having that Pokemon in our starting hand, and also in case we prize one and one gets knocked out, we have other ones that we can go ahead and attack with. We don't need 4 VMAXs because they give up 3 prizes. If your opponent knocks out 2, they win the game. So the 4th one would just kind of be excessive. The 3rd is in case one gets prized or you have to discard it, you still have your other 2. So now that we have our primary attacking core, let's go ahead and build our consistency pieces, and that is the Inteleon line. We don't want V, so I have to take off the Pokemon V. And we're going to get a couple of quick shooting Inteleons in there, as well as a Shady Dealings Inteleon. But in order to use Inteleons, we need Drizzile. Now, there are a few different Drizziles you see here. We always want the Shady Dealings Drizzile when possible. And we want to maximize the number of Drizziles because it has a really good ability that lets us search our deck for a trainer. Drizzile has to come from Sobble, so we got to get some Sobbles first. And again, there are a bunch of different Sobbles we can choose, but we want the Rapid Strike Sobble. Why? Because all these other cards are Quick Shooting Inteleon, our Urshifu, V, and VMAX, they're all Rapid Strike. So we're going to kind of keep that theme of Rapid Strike. So now we have our main Pokemon core. We can get a few more if we want. We can go ahead and choose something like Medicham. That's a really good option for Pokemon, we can go ahead and go with Vaporeon V, and V Max. These are actually the backup attackers that I really like to use. So Vaporeon V and V Max are also water type Rapid Strike Pokemon. Okay, so we have our Pokemon. We can even go further if we really want to with Octillery. Octillery is a really good single Rapid Strike Pokemon that we can use, so we can get Remoraid, because Octillery evolves from Remoraid. And look at this. Now all of a sudden we have 24 Pokemon, and that's not... For some decks, that's common. There are going to be decks like Mad Party, maybe Rapid Strike Urshifu, that just have a ton of Pokemon. That's okay. Why is that okay? Because the energies that we run are generally pretty low. We're going to have a few Rapid Strike energies. Wrong ones. We'll go with the Rapid Strike energies, and then we're also just going to get water energies. Why? Because we need water energy for Vaporeon. It also helps with a supporter that we're going to use. You could go one more energy. You can do 4-4, 4-3. Try to build out what you think you need. We'll start with the supporters. So we'll get our supporters out of the way because they are really important. And this is going to change a little bit with this Rapid Strike deck. We're still going to have Boss's Orders. We're going to get 2 copies of Boss's Orders. But we're not going to have as many Marnies and Professor's Research. Why? Because we need to make space for a different supporter with our water types. So we're going to do 2 Research. I keep choosing the wrong. I have so many versions of these. And we'll get Marnie. But our main supporter here is Melanie. This is a water type supporter that lets us take a water energy from our discard and attach it to one of our Pokemon V, and then we get to draw 3 cards. So it's a super powerful supporter for water types, and we definitely want to use it a ton. So there's our supporter count, 10 supporters. We can turn off the filter here, and now we can go ahead and get our items. So I'll filter for items, and we'll get an air balloon in there. What other items do we really want? Well, we want to be able to find our water energies. So there's an item that lets us search for water energies called Capacious Bucket. And so we're going to get 2 of those. What other items do we really want? We got 15 cards remaining. Let's see. We could throw a Fan of Waves in there. Right, we'll just throw it in there, and if we find out that we're tight on space, then maybe we can get rid of it. But it is a Rapid Strike card, and so because of Octillery has an ability that lets us search our deck for any Rapid Strike card we want. So anything that has this Rapid Strike logo, and that does include items and energies. So we could, in theory, get this Rapid Strike Fan of Waves if we want to. What other cards can we go for? Well, we need Level Ball. Level Ball is going to be really big to find our Drizziles and Inteleons, or just our Drizziles really, but Drizziles are super important because if we can find a Drizzile, we can find any trainer we want. We also want Evolution Incense so that we can find our Octillery, we can find our Urshifu VMAX, we can find Inteleons, whatever kind of evolution Pokemon we need. What else? We got 7 more spots. How many other things do we need? We're just gonna kind of scroll quickly through these. Maybe get some ideas. We need Quick Ball. Forgot about Quick Ball. We'll get 4 Quick Ball in there. And now we only have 3 spots left. So let's scroll through these. We got 3 more spots. Oh, we need our stadium, right? I always like to have stadium. So we're going to get the water type stadium, Tower of Water, or the Rapid Strike Tower of Waters. And now we got 2 in there. We have space for 1 more card. So let's go back to items. And personally, I don't necessarily think we need all of this. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut the Vaporeons. We're going to get a different Pokemon. We're going to go ahead and get a Passimian in here. Passimian is a really good... we're going to cut this down even more. Passimian is a really good item, Pokemon, because it helps us deal more damage to bench Pokemon. That's kind of what Rapid Strike wants to do, is it deals damage all over the place so that you can kind of put a lot of pressure on your opponent and put them in checkmate scenarios, meaning that no matter what they do next, you're going to win the next turn anyway. So now that we have a little bit more space, we got 3 cards, we can get a tool that we need, and that is Telescopic Sight. Telescopic Sight is going to help us deal even more damage to benched Pokemon Vs and VMAXs. So now we still have 1 more card. Could we get rid of one of these energies? Yeah, we could. And from here, we might do we gotta look for another kind of backup attacker here. And a good option is Medicham. I kind of briefly showed it earlier. We're just going to get 1 Medicham in there. It has an incredible attack, Yoga Loop. It only does 20 damage, but you can put that 20 damage anywhere you want. And if you knock out a Pokemon with that 20 damage, you skip your opponent's entire next turn and you go again. So very, very powerful. And then there we go. Now we have a 60 card deck. Again, just look at all of the cards that we talked about that are in this from last video. We have the entire Drizzile, Sobble, and Teleon. We have Evolution Incense, we have Level Ball, we have Quick Ball, we have Boss, Marnie, Professor's Research, Air Balloon. I mean, there's so many cards in there. There you go. Now you got a Rapid Strike Urshifu and a Single Strike Urshifu deck built from scratch. Keep in mind, the ratios are relatively the same. One had 20 Pokemon, this one has 23. One had 32 trainers, this one has 29. And both have 8 energies. There's going to be a little bit of variation, but that like 20, 32, 8 or 20, 30, 10 is a really good place to start. 20 Pokemon, 30 trainers, 10 energies is like a really good foundation. And then you can kind of cut Pokemon or cut energies and stuff and add trainers if you need. I generally like to keep 9 to 12 supporters because you can only play supporters once per turn. If you have 6 supporters in your hand, you can't do anything. You're going to be really limited to just one thing. So you don't want to clog your hand up with Pokemon that you can't play. Like if you have a ton of VMAXs, that doesn't really help you a ton because you can't play them all, especially because your bench space is limited. So we don't need that many Pokemon VMAX, just like we don't need that many supporters. But choosing what supporters we use is very important since you only have a few of them. Boss, Marnie, Research, Melanie, and if you're playing Mew, Elisa, Sparkle. Those are the most common supporters you will find in the game. Boss, Marnie, Research are in almost every single deck. And then things like Melanie are specific for water decks. Elisa, Sparkle is going to be exclusive to Fusion Strike decks, mostly Mew VMAX. So, there's some variation, but for the most part, this is what you're gonna see. How do we know what decks are really good? How do we know if we want to get an idea of what decks look like? Like I know, I've seen this deck online, or I saw it in a video. I want to learn how to build it. Where do we go to get deck information? Well, we're going to go over to 2 websites, and both of these links will be in the video description. The first website here is PokemonCard.io. It's a really good website, and you can see that it has top cards and decks. And if you click on this top card tab, these are the most commonly used cards in the Pokemon TCG, and this data is taken from their own website. But if you look, Evo Incense, Quick Ball, Marnie, Boss, like look at all these cards and tell me that they doesn't match almost identically to the cards we talked about in the last video. And I didn't even look at this when I made that video. That was just for my own experience and from my deck building and playing and stuff. And I mean, look at this. So many of these cards are things we talked about in the last video. That's Path to the Peak. We start getting into a little bit expanded territory with things like Verse Seeker and Dedenne, Guzma, but for the most part, I mean, like, these are really, really common cards. But we can also look at decks. If we go back to the main page here, we can just click on decks, and we can see, okay, what decks are people making? My computer is the worst. It's not the site, it's my computer. And we can choose a format. We can choose standard as our format here and say, okay, I only want standard decks. And I want decks that, up to 150 US dollars. Because one of the cool things about PokemonCard.io is that it tells you how much a deck will cost. And we can also get the date. I want decks from the past month. So from today's February 9th. So from January 8th to February 9th. And we could search decks from there. And here we go. Here's just a bunch of decks that people are making. Tablemon is a very good content creator, so if you see decks from them, it's a very reputable source. Individuals like Azul GG and other content creators generally are really good deck lists. So if you say, "Oh, I love Glaceon" or "I love Vaporeon," whatever deck you like, you can also just search that Pokemon's name. You could say, "Is there in the past month? I love Corviknight." So can I search for, oh, look, there's a Corviknight deck. There's one. I put up a Corviknight deck. I have deck lists on PokemonCard.io as well. And so you can say, okay, let's find a deck that we like. And when you click on it, it's going to show you the exact list and what the estimated price for that deck will be. So here we go. This is the deck list. Don't do this to me. Don't make me look bad. My computer's the absolute pits. But look, 20 Pokemon, 9 energies, 31 trainers. It kind of fits that mold. 20, 30, 10. That's, again, it's not going to be always that way. Some are going to have 15 Pokemon. Some might even have 8 Pokemon. And they might have 8 energies and like 42 trainers or something ridiculous. It does happen from time to time, or like 38 trainers, something like that. 8 Pokemon, 12 energies, and then 40 trainers. That does exist. So then you say, okay, here's what we got going. Here's the deck, and some of the stuff might not make sense to you. Like, why is there a Leafeon in there? It's because Leafeon can accelerate or find grass energies and attach them to other Pokemon so that we can start attacking with them quicker. We look at Corviknight here. And it has an attack cost of 2 metal and 1 colorless. So we use Leafeon to get that grass energy to meet the colorless requirement. And then we attach a metal energy from our hand. And now we're only 1 attachment away from attacking with G-Max Hurricane instead of being 3 attachments away. And this deck does have other ways of accelerating metal energies. So, there's a lot of things we can do. But that's pretty much how this website works. They also have some articles about what cards are coming out and different products and all kind of stuff. So you can do a little bit of reading and get some more information about the Pokemon trading card game. So this one was put up just a day ago about Lycanroc and Suicune V, Shadow Rider Calyrex, Gengar. Bunch of cool stuff, some new products coming out that you might be interested in if you're looking to play the game. And then we have another website that is also extremely helpful, and I use this website all the time. I use both of these all the time, actually. So here we are at play.limitlesstcg.com, and they are super good because, one, if you want to play in an online tournament, well, then you can go and click these tournaments, the tournament tab, and it'll bring you to upcoming tournaments so that you can register for one and start playing, test out your deck, learn the game, grow as a player. But you can also look at different decks. You can get an idea of what decks are really popular, so you know what you're likely to go against if you play in a tournament. You can see right here, Mew is the most popular deck. It's almost 18% of the meta, and the next popular is Jolteon, which, it's 9%. Mew is almost double as popular as number 2. So very, very common deck, Mew. Urshifu Umbreon is also very popular at about 8%, and it's the deck that I play the most. So you can click on any of these decks and you say, oh, Jolteon, that sounds really interesting. Let me see what that looks like. And it'll tell you all the people who have played this deck and how they did and when the tournament was. So on January 15th, this person, Jonathan Patrico, Jonathan, I'm sorry if I messed up your name. On January 15th, 2022, they went first out of 359 people with this Jolteon deck. And you can click this little list button, and it'll bring you to exactly what their deck list is. 20 trainers, 20 Pokemon, 33 trainers, 7 energies. Again, very close to that 20, 30, 10, mark that we talked about. And this is exactly what their list is. And you can just, if you really wanted to, you can copy this list and play exactly this, or you can copy it as a template and then change some stuff around to kind of suit your liking. It also shows you what matches he played. If you click matches, you can see what they played against. They played a couple of Mews, they lost to one, okay, they tied another Mew, beat some more Mew. I mean, Mew is like the thing at the moment, and that in the next couple of months that might change, but probably not too much, at least for the foreseeable future. I mean, we have several Mew decks that they're beating. Suicune, you're going to beat because it's weak to water. Water is weak to electric, so they're beating a bunch of Suicunes. Single prize decks like this Moltres and Teleon stuff, they're going to be easy to beat because Jolteon deals bench damage. So, there's a lot of different things to consider, and you can get some really good information from websites like PokemonCard.io and play.limitlesstcg.com. So there you have it. Those are some general principles for deck building. We walked through how to build 2 different decks, one that uses the Inteleon line, one that uses my preferred deck, and a couple of websites that are really, really useful for finding out deck information, finding lists that you can either copy that list or build your own off of it. A lot of times, decks are, at least at the moment, are pretty solved. We kind of know what the best way to play certain decks are, and I would say about 53 to 55 cards in each deck are set. Like, you should be using at least 50 of those cards, and maybe even as high as 53 to 55 cards in that deck, and the last 5 to 7 cards that kind of fall to preference. Maybe you don't like the capture energy in Jolteon, maybe you want an extra lightning energy. That's up to you. But for the most part, the 55 card core is pretty solved. And like I said, you choose the last remaining cards as a little bit of touch of personalization. Ultimately, playing the most competitive deck isn't always the best thing to do. I mean, if you're coming out to win a tournament, then yeah, you should be playing the top 3 decks in the meta. If you're looking to just play and have fun and enjoy the game at your local card store, local game store with your friends or whatever, then play the deck that suits you the best. Is Single Strike Urshifu the best deck in the game? No, it's not. Is it a good deck? Yes, it is. And so that's what I play. I enjoy playing that the most. It makes me the happiest, and that's just what I do. Could I go ahead and buy Mew VMAX and start playing and maybe get more wins like that? Yes, I could, but I won't have as much fun playing Mew as I do Urshifu, because it's the deck I like, and that's ultimately what you need to do. Play the deck you like. Play the Pokemon, it's your game. You play it however you want. I've rambled on long enough, so I'm going to end this. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, found this a little informative. If you did, subscribe, like, comment, all that kind of stuff, and I will see you next time.